What is going on, everybody? In this video, I'm going to be responding to my viewers' college football hot takes for the 2025 college football season and moving forward. Now, let's start off this video with this first person's hot take. This person says Notre Dame will win their first national championship since 1988. I believe he's referring to specifically this next season. And Notre Dame would have to bounce back from their last national championship loss and make it through the playoffs again, but this time actually win it all. They came up short against Ohio State last season, and I don't know if they're going to make their way back to the Natty next season. There's just way too many good teams in college football. Notre Dame also loses some very good leaders like Riley Leonard on offense, and they lose Xavier Watts and Benjamin Morrison on defense. But this team still is a very well-coached football team, and they have a good foundation. I definitely see them back in the playoffs, and they return probably the best running back in the country in Jeremiah Love. But if we're talking next season, I don't see Notre Dame winning a national championship, but I could always be wrong. This next person says Nebraska will take a huge leap. And I could see this happening in year 3 under Matt Rule. Maybe they have an Indiana type of season where they just drastically improve and win double-digit games. Nebraska won 7 football games last season, so they weren't that bad. So for them to take a huge leap, I'd say they would have to win double-digit games. Me personally, I had them at 9-3, I believe. I do think this team could be a dark horse playoff contender, but Dylan Raiola is still young and has a lot to learn. And they definitely need some skill position players to step up, and they lost their defensive coordinator in Tony White. I still like this team. I think they're trending in the right direction. I do think they will take a step forward, but I don't know how big of a step forward this guy is referring to. But me personally, I think they'll win around 8 to 9 games. This next person says Coastal Carolina will make the college football playoff sometime in the next few years. And I really don't see this happening. Coastal Carolina hasn't been that great since losing Grayson McCall at quarterback. They've been okay, but they've been very inconsistent, and they don't recruit or use the transfer portal at a very high level. You never know in college football, but I think there's other group of 5 teams above them, and I don't see Coastal Carolina making the playoffs anytime soon. This next person says Louisville will beat Clemson for 2 years in a row, and I actually predicted this to happen, so I do agree with you. I think it's very possible that Louisville has a breakout season next year as well. And Louisville will actually get to play Clemson at home late season. I totally think this is an upset type of game for Clemson. I think Clemson will win double-digit games and be a playoff team for sure, but I could see them dropping a game like this one. I think Louisville has the quarterback to beat any team in the ACC next year. I think Miller Moss is one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the ACC. I think he was a huge pickup for them. And I did predict Louisville to beat Clemson next season, so I do agree with you. This next person says Andrew Luck will be the next Stanford head coach. But as of the making of this video, Andrew Luck did not get hired as the next Stanford head coach. They hired a former NFL veteran from the Panthers. And Stanford hired Frank Reich. But Frank Reich will only be there 1 year. He signed a 1-year contract. Maybe he'll get his contract extended even more. But there is still a possibility for Andrew Luck to possibly become the head coach in the future. But as of 2025, Frank Reich will be the head coach, and Andrew Luck will still be the general manager for Stanford. This next person says Syracuse is easily one of the most overrated teams heading into this season. I've seen many view them as a dark horse in the ACC. But they virtually lose their entire offense and their schedule gets way tougher, 6 to 7 wins at most. And I cannot agree with you anymore. I think this team is going to take a huge step back. If you look at their schedule last year, it was super easy. I know they won double-digit games, but next season the schedule is super tough and they lose a lot of production and Kyle McCord at quarterback. They have a brutal schedule in 2025, and I actually had them at 5-7. And I think teams around them in the ACC have done a very good job in the portal, and Syracuse didn't do as good this season as they did last season. I think Fran Brown is a good head coach, but I could see them struggling next season, and I agree with this hot take. This next person says Alabama will lose 5 games. And this is what I'm talking about when so many people are just down on this Alabama team. I really don't see this happening. Kalen DeBoer in Alabama had a struggling first season. But it was a transitional year for Alabama, and I don't think people realize how much Alabama lost after Nick Saban left that team. And heading into next season, Kalen DeBoer has made some big moves. They have a good quarterback room, and Ryan Grubb will be the new offensive coordinator. I think Kalen DeBoer will find his footing at Alabama, and I don't see them taking any more steps back. Kalen DeBoer is one of the most winningest coaches in college football. There's no reason Alabama should lose 5 games next season. This next person says conferences need to be as regional as possible. And I don't see this happening anytime soon. College football has been absolutely changed because of conference realignment. I do agree though, conferences should be regional. We should not have teams from California traveling all the way to the East Coast on the regular. And they should not be in the same conference, but we better get used to it because that's how college football is. And it's definitely creating a lot of hype and surprise to the game. But I do think it would be a lot better if conferences were as regional as possible, but we'll see what they do in the future. This next person says Vandy makes some more noise this year, and I do expect them to be a winning football team again. And I think this team is going to upset another team or two next year. I had them at 8-4 in my recent schedule prediction. They don't have too tough of a schedule, and they're at the top of the SEC for return in production. And they return an electric quarterback in Diego Pavia. He's a very good quarterback for this team, and they should be really good again next season. So I am expecting them to make some more noise in 2025. This next person says Oklahoma fires Brent Venables. And for this to happen, Oklahoma would have to have a very bad season once again and probably have a losing season. With John Mateer at quarterback, I think there's hope for this team to win at least 7 football games with the brutal schedule. If Oklahoma can do at least that, I don't see Brent Venables going anywhere. But I'd say if Oklahoma has another losing season, that's not going to look good on Brent Venables' track record because Oklahoma is never a losing football team. And that could definitely put Brent Venables in the hot seat, but I don't expect him to get fired next season. But I do think this is an interesting hot take, and I do think there is a slight possibility. This next person says Navy wins the American Conference this year, and I actually do agree with this. I think Navy might be one of the best group of 5 teams and definitely the best American team. This is a team that returns a bunch of production, and they return Blake Horvath at quarterback. They ended their season on a huge note last year, beating Army, and they also beat Oklahoma, which was a big win for them. And Blake Horvath will be one of the better returning quarterbacks in the nation next year, and he's underrated. I think Navy has a great foundation heading into next season. I expect another double-digit win season, and I could definitely see this team winning the American Conference. This next person says Bryce Underwood helps Michigan win 10 games and a win over Ohio State. I don't know if they'll be able to get 10 wins. I think they'll be good, but I don't know if they'll be that good. I think they could be a top 25 team, but they still have some question marks. And that would be insane if Michigan won 5 in a row over Ohio State, but I would not put it out of the possibility at this point. It's one thing to be one of the best players in the country as a true freshman like Jeremiah Smith was, but Bryce Underwood is going to have a lot more pressure on him because he's not just a receiver, he's the leader for that offense. He will be the quarterback, and Michigan just does not have great skill position players, and they do lose some defensive players to the NFL who will go in the first and second round. So I don't know if Michigan is going to be as good as people think they are. I'd say 8 to 9 wins would be a good season for Michigan, but 10 wins would definitely be a surprise season in my eyes, and I think it would be surprising again if they beat Ohio State at this point. But you never know, it is Ryan Day. I could see him losing 5 in a row to Ohio State. This next person says Kansas State will win the Big 12 with a 10-2 record, and they will make the college football playoffs, which we should have last year if our team didn't go 8-4. I don't know what that last part means, and that doesn't really make sense to me. But I could totally see Kansas State making the Big 12 championship game and possibly winning it. Chris Klieman always keeps this team consistent, and I could see them making their way back to the Big 12 title game like they did in 2022 when they beat TCU. They weren't that far off from the other teams in the Big 12 last year, and they return Avery Johnson for another season. He should be a very good quarterback, and they also return Dylan Edwards, who has potential to be a breakout player. We'll see if the defense could take a step forward, but they've done a solid job in the portal, and I wouldn't be surprised if Kansas State did win double-digit games. We have another hot take on Oklahoma. This next person says Oklahoma will be one of the worst teams in the SEC in 2024 because their schedule is brutal. Oklahoma has one of the most brutal schedules in the country once again, but I do expect them to take a step forward because of John Mateer. A quarterback can make a huge difference for a team, and I think John Mateer is a top 10 quarterback in the nation. I still don't have great expectations for that offensive line, and I also don't have great expectations for that Oklahoma receiving room. I think they'll have 1 or 2 good receivers. I don't see them as a playoff team though, but I do see them taking a step forward and winning 7 to 8 football games. And I think that will be enough for Brent Venables to gain some credibility. And I think Oklahoma will kind of be at the middle of the pack in the SEC, not one of the worst teams. So I would say I disagree with this hot take. This next person says South Carolina will be the best team in the country, finishing 12-1 with an SEC title and getting a first round bye. Look, this is definitely a possibility. Florida could be that team as well. LSU could be that team as well. Maybe Alabama could be that team. I think the SEC is wide open. But South Carolina should definitely be in the conversation to have a breakout year. If South Carolina is the best team in the SEC, Lenore Sellis has to be a Heisman finalist. And dual threat quarterbacks are taking over college football, so you never know. I had South Carolina at 8 or 9 wins. I think they'll be good again. But the SEC is a gauntlet, and they do have a gauntlet schedule, so I don't know if they can do this. But anyways, let's finish this video with the last hot take. This person says Ohio State will repeat next year and after. It's one thing for them to repeat next year, but it's another thing for them to win 3 in a row, and that's not going to happen in today's college football. At least when I look at the landscape of college football, I don't see a team doing this for a while. So I'm just going to keep this short and simple. I don't see Ohio State winning the national title again, and I definitely don't see them winning 3 in a row, but they should definitely be in the conversation. But anyways, that is going to do it for today's college football hot takes. You guys leave your hot takes down in the comments below, but let me remind you guys to like the video and also subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And if you guys love college football, then you'll love this channel because we upload a ton of college football content and we basically cover everything on this channel. So definitely consider subscribing and also consider checking out my socials down in the description below. But that is going to do it, guys, and peace out.